Last week, Donald Trump threatened Brazil with 50% tariffs from August the 1st. Joining me today is StoneX Brazil Market Intelligence Manager and a coffee specialist, Fernando Maximiliano. Nice to see you again, Fernando.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Fernando, let's start with the latest tariff news. 40% of the world's Arabica coffee is produced in Brazil, and roughly a third of the coffee consumed in the US comes from there. Surely, if Trump were to carry out his threat, it would hurt Brazilian coffee exports significantly.
Well, it seems like coffee doesn't have problems enough. Now we have tariffs impacting the coffee supply chain in Brazil and in the world. We're going to discuss about it. But this is a big hit for Brazilian exporters. Brazil rely a lot on the American market, and this is a big to exporters and producers. As a reference, in 2024, Brazil exported over 8 million bags of coffee to the United States. That represents more than 16% of all Brazilian exports. So for sure, it has a very strong weight on Brazil trade, and Brazil coffee market will feel the heat if these tariffs are carrying on and are applied in Brazil.
So, this means that the level of tariff would not be good news for either the US coffee industry and American consumers, would it?
Yeah, okay. So it's very important to understand this. There is a very strong link, there is a strong connection between those two markets. As I said, the United States, the main destination of Brazil exports, it's the largest consumer in the world. So we see Brazil see the US as a very important player. But also, when you look at the American side, the US data shows that from all the coffee imported into the United States in 2024, 34% came from Brazil. So, with these tariffs being placed, where is the US going to source this coffee from? So, it's very challenging. And also, we have to think out of these 8 million bags, more than 80% is Arabica coffee, and it is very difficult to shift this to another origin. Brazil produces around 40 million bags depending on the year. The second largest Arabica producer is Colombia, which produces around 12 million bags. And a great part of that coffee is already being shipped over to the United States. The US is the main destination of Colombian coffee exports as well. So it's going to be a very challenging situation for the American industry to source this coffee as elsewhere. And also important to highlight how important the industry is. According to the National Coffee Association, the coffee industry employs more than 2.2 million bags in the US, and every $1 is spent on imports creates $43 as value in the American economy. So the American industry will also face a challenging period, as well as the Brazilian exporters.
So, would you go as far as saying that the American coffee industry could be one of the most impacted by the tariffs?
Yes, also we have to think there is something else on this. It's not only Brazil. The US has placed tariffs on Canada, and Canada is the main destination of American exports of coffee and re-exports. So the US industry also exports coffee to Canada, and they are gonna have a problem doing that trade. Also, when we are looking at the US sourcing this coffee in other origins, those countries are under tariffs as well. So Colombia is 10%, so it's the smallest one, but the US placed 20% tariffs on Vietnam, 32% tariffs on Indonesia, 30% tariffs on Mexico, which is also an important player in the coffee market, and Europe. So this brings this actually shows us that the industry will have a harsh time. And also, in the end, who's going to suffer more is the consumer. The consumer is already paying a 32% inflation on roast and ground coffee in the US, and that's because of the price increase we saw worldwide. But now they'll have to pay another layer of inflation on the coffee prices, as this price increase uh, will be will be moved to the consumer.
And what about coffee prices then? With tariffs disrupting market dynamics, what should we be expecting in the coming months?
This is a very good question. I've been answering this question a lot for the past few days, and it's interesting because a lot of people are confused. When you talk about tariffs, the first thing that comes to your mind is inflation, and inflation would impact consumption. So everybody thinks this is going to be bearish to the market, and they were expecting New York to fall. But it's interesting to remember that the ICE exchange, the New York market, is highly related to the American domestic market. And when we look ahead, if those tariffs are really being placed on Brazil and on those countries, and of course we know those countries are gonna negotiate. Brazil will for sure negotiate and try to change this. But if we see these tariffs, this would lead to high prices in the United States and a low availability of coffee in the physical market in the country. And so futures in New York would be related to that specific market situation. So this is bullish to New York. On the other hand, I'm sorry, on the other hand, the coffee that is not being sold to the US, that is in Brazil, would be bearish to the physical market in Brazil, as we would see a higher supply, a higher availability of a coffee in Brazil. And also some other origins could see some price increase because as the US would try to source this elsewhere, this increase in demand would be bullish to prices in other countries.
Well, thank you very much for your insights again. For more videos like this, please do like and subscribe.